Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. What if the Uzumaki elders to Naruto away from Konoha? Harem Part 10. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. Hinata was terrified. Sure, she had been scared of thunder before, but right now she was terrified of what was going on outside of her window. It had started out as any normal June day. Sure, she could feel the moisture in the air, but she just thought that it was her chakra being weird. Apparently, she now had a newfound skill in predicting the weather. Hinata huddled on her bed as sheets of rain poured onto the roof for the Hyuga compound. She could see the large flashes of lightning as they streaked across the sky. She could even feel the wind every time it blew on her barely open window. After a rather loud clap of thunder, she had had enough. She scurried out of her bedroom and ran down the hallway in sheer terror. She instinctively activated her Byakugan and looked around for anywhere she could hide. Once she found where she wanted to go, she sprinted off to go hide. Living in a cave for a year taught Naruto a lot of things. It taught him how to keep his spaces clean and rodent-free, and it taught him how to function alone. But one of the most important things it taught him was the ability to sense your surroundings even when you are asleep. It took him 8 months of constant training, but he was able to sense other chakra signatures even when he isn't awake. Naruto had been blissfully asleep dreaming about ramen when he felt a small alarm bell go off in his head. He quickly sat up and looked around to see where he was. He saw that he wasn't in his apartment, but then quickly remembered that he was staying at the Hyuga compound since it was their day to train him on the schedule. He rubbed his eyes and looked around to see what was wrong. Anyone awake in there? He thought as he closed his eyes to better get a sense of what was wrong. He sighed when he didn't get a response from anyone, meaning that both the entities that lived in his head were asleep. Naruto then felt Hinata's chakra and how she was in distress and was running. He opened his eyes and sprinted out of his room. Naruto channeled chakra to his eyes and activated his 2-Tomo Sharingan and sprinted to where Hinata was. After a few minutes of running, he found her in a long hallway hiding. He flared his chakra so that it would alert her that he was there and smiled when she bolted into his arms. Hinata-chan, what's going on? He asked quietly as he hugged the slightly shaking girl who was in his arms. The thunder s scared me. She stuttered into his chest, which made him smile a little. You're scared? He whispered into her ear, which made the girl nod her head. Okay, well, why don't you sleep with me? I won't let the thunder hurt you. He sweetly suggested, which made her eyes widen. Really? She asked with hope in her eyes. Naruto nodded his head and smiled at her, which put her at ease slightly. He led her to the room he was sleeping in and slid open the door. He deactivated his Sharingan and closed the door. He then put Hinata down on one side of the bed and laid on the other side. When another loud clap of thunder rattled the compound, Hinata started whimpering and scooted over to Naruto, who instinctively wrapped his arms around her and released a calming aura of chakra so that they both could sleep. When morning finally came, Hitomi went to go wake up the children. She walked to Hinata's room and found that she wasn't there. She instantly started panicking and activated her Byakugan. She looked around for her daughter and found her in another room. Curious as to where she was, Hitomi walked to the door her daughter was behind. She deactivated her eyes and opened the door. She grinned at the sight that she saw. Naruto and Hinata wrap in a very close hug with Hinata's head pressed against Naruto's chest. Hitomi internally squealed kawaii and ran to get a camera. As she was running, she ran into a number of the branch family mothers and brought them along to see how cute the sleeping children were. They all went to Naruto's room and found them both still asleep. They all smiled and quietly squealed at how cute of a sight it was. Naruto opened one of his eyes and looked at the gathering of mothers and raised his eyebrow. Hitomi saw this and sweetly smiled at the boy. Naruto saw that it was time for him and Hinata to get up. He then looked down and saw that Hinata was borrowed into his arms and started to blush. I see you got a new edition last night, Naruto. Hitomi spoke with a light tone of amusement in her voice which made Naruto blush even more. She then went over to Hinata and kissed her good morning. Feeling that someone was kissing her, Hinta opened her eyes and saw her mother leaning over her. Good morning, Ka-chan. Hinata smiled as she yawned. Good morning, Hinata. Did you have a good sleep? Her mother asked with a smirk on her face. Hi. The small girl spoke as she tried to get up but found herself tangled. She looked down and saw that she was wrapped in Naruto's arms and went nuclear, which made Hitomi smile even wider. I think it's time for her to go get changed and clean, Naruto, Hitomi said to the equally embarrassed boy, who instantly let go of his friend who jumped off of him and ran out of his room. Hitomi smirked as she watched her daughter run back to her room. She got scared and went to you last night during the storm? She asked the boy, who nodded his head. I felt that she was scared and I went to her. I found her in a hallway crying, so I let her sleep here. It happened with the animals sometimes, and it helps if they sleep with something to make them feel better. He explained to the mother, who nodded her head. Okay, just don't make this a habit. I don't know what Hiashi would do if he heard about this happening more than once. She declared to the boy, whose face went pale, which made her laugh again. Don't worry, I won't tell him, and neither will the other mothers. You have nothing to worry about. She reassured the child, who let out a breath he didn't know he was holding in. Thank you, he whispered to the matriarch of the Hyuga clan. She smiled sweetly at the boy and then left his room. When you are ready, we will be in the dining room, she told the boy, who nodded his head. After 25 minutes, Naruto was dressed in his normal training outfit. He was wearing a pair of long black pants, and a short-sleeved blue shirt with a green spiral on the back. He looked around the room and made sure that everything was in order. Once he was sure it was, he left the room and walked to the dining room. In the 6 months that Naruto had been training, he had been at the Hyuga compound at least 3 times each week. He had grown familiar with everyone who lived there and greeted them all with smiles and waves. He continued to walk down the elegantly decorated hallways that connected the different floors and sections of the massive compound. Once he made it to the dining room, he still couldn't help but look around and gasp. There were 2 large sliding doors that opened up to a large room that looked out to a Zen garden. There were portraits of past clan heads and their families and even ancient-looking tapestries. He looked around and his eyes led to the medium-sized wooden table that had 6 chairs around it. There were 2 on each side and 1 in both of the ends of the table. Currently, 3 out of the 6 chairs were being used. Hiashi was sitting at the head of the table looking at a few documents. Hitomi was sitting on the other end talking to one of the branch members who was going to be bringing them breakfast, and Hinata was sitting in one of the chairs that were facing Naruto. She was reading a book on anatomy. Good morning, Hiashi-sama, Naruto greeted as he bowed at the waist. Hiashi looked up at the boy and smirked as he watched the son of his rival bow to him. The first time he saw Naruto, he knew that he was Minato's son. Good morning, Naruto, how are you doing this morning? He asked as he looked back down at the papers that he was originally reading. I am fine this morning, the child said as he made his way to the table. He looked at his best friend and smiled at her. She smiled back but with a slight blush on her face which made Hitomi smirk. What are you going to be doing today? Hiashi asked at the table, still not glancing from his papers. Well, we have 2 months till the exams in Kiri, so I'm going to be testing their teamwork in a series of tests and exercises, Hitomi said with a smile. She looked at the 2 children and thought about how far they had come since the beginning. She had told Hiashi about the Sandame's plan and he responded with mixed feelings. He truly cared about his daughter and was very pleased to know that she was the youngest Hyuga ever to activate the Byakugan. He was not pleased with the fact that Sarutobi wanted her and Naruto to strengthen the reputation of the village. He thought that the idea was insane, but was swayed when Hitomi told him that Hinata was able to make 165 shadow clones. He still didn't like the idea, but eventually relented and agreed. What shocked Hitomi was how on board he was with having Naruto stay at the compound so frequently. The clan was a 50-50 split when it came to Naruto. Most of the women and children found the boy to be very nice and pleasant. They even let him help them through the use of his clones. Most of the men, however, didn't like the boy at all. Even after the support of both Hazashi and Hisashi, they didn't like him. Hazashi himself went out to say that he wouldn't know what would have happened had Naruto not stopped the Cloud Nin that had taken Hinata, but it still didn't help. That sounds like a great idea, Hisashi said as he moved his documents to make room for the breakfast that one of the branch members brought out. It consisted of eggs, toast, porridge, and a few sausage links. I'm going to send my clones to Gigi Sensei since I'm his apprentice, some clones to the library, and some clones to my apartment to practice seals, Naruto said after he thanked the person who brought him his breakfast. How is being the Hokage's apprentice, Naruto? Hitomi asked after she swallowed her food. It's really cool, I get to learn about how he does his job, politics, and the ins and outs of the village. Naruto explained, which made both adults nod his head. That's interesting that he's getting you involved with politics, Hisashi said as he thought about the implications that Sarutobi's move to make the Jinchuriki his apprentice. It's actually really interesting. Since I'm a censor, I can tell when people are lying and it helps me learn how to read people. Gigi doesn't let me talk when he's meeting with people except when people talk to me first. Naruto said, which made Hisashi nod his head. He had seen Naruto's clones in the office numerous times and was quite impressed with the boy. How about you, Hinata? Naruto asked the girl who, ept, due to being put on the spot so suddenly. Well, I'm also going to send some clones to the library, but most of them will be practicing or studying. She stuttered to the group who nodded their heads. During the time that Hinata had known Naruto, her stutter had gotten much better, but she still sometimes did it out of habit but was quickly getting out of it. Very good, Hinata, I'm very proud of you for getting so good at the 2 trigrams 16 palms technique, Hisashi said as he praised his daughter. Hitomi also smiled and nodded her head at the girl who blushed. Yeah, Hinata-chan, you're getting really good. The blonde said with a large smile on his face. But I do have a question. Oh, Hisashi asked as he looked at the blonde. What would that be? Well, why can't other people do the palm techniques? He asked, which made Hitomi nearly choke on her food. What do you mean? Hisashi replied as he eyed the child. Well, the technique requires for the user to hit the tenketsu point in the body right, he said as he looked at Hisashi, who slowly nodded his head. Well, why can't other people do it as well? The Byakugan allows for us to see the points so that we can close them. The techniques require the precision of the Byakugan so that you can see what you're doing. Hitomi explained to the blonde who nodded his head. Yeah, I know that, but what if you just memorize the points in the body? He asked, which made the room go dead silent. Hitomi looked at Hisashi for an answer but was shocked when he didn't have one right away. The man was actually intrigued by the idea of a way for you not to need the Byakugan to do the palm technique. After a few minutes of silence, Hisashi finally answered the question. Well, Naruto, no one had actually ever thought of that before. He said as he looked at the boy. Well, he definitely got his father's ability to pick things apart. Really? He asked, which made the man nod his head. Huh, oh well, Naruto said as he went back to eating his food. After a few more minutes of eating, Hitomi called the 2 children to follow her to one of the Hyuga training grounds. Both children said goodbye to the clan head, who smiled at them and followed Hitomi. After a short walk, Hitomi walked the kids to the training ground and got them ready to train. She got them all stretched out and had them run around the field. After their 3-mile run, she had them do physical exercises. Naruto was up to 65 push-ups, and 80 sit-ups with 100 jumping jacks, while Hinata was doing 45 push-ups, 65 sit-ups, and 85 jumping jacks. Both were very physically fit 4-year-olds and were around genin level if Hitomi had to gauge their strengths. When the children concluded their warm-ups, she called them both over to the center of the grounds and smiled at them. She then took out a scroll from her pouch and smiled. Alright Naruto and Hinata, as you know you will be participating in the Chunin exams. Meaning that you need to have some skills other than taijutsu and ninjutsu. You need actual ninja skills. She explained as she walked in front of them in a line. Today, you will be trying to get a second version of this scroll that I have hidden somewhere in the village. She said as she handed Hinata the scroll. You have 7 hours to find it, she said to the duo who nodded their heads. Good luck, she said before she disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto-kun, what are we going to do? Hinata said as she looked at the scroll in her hands. Well, maybe the scroll has some instructions on it. He said as he gestured for the scroll from Hinata's hand. He then opened it and read what it said. While I may be one, the best things come in pairs. Naruto looked at the scroll and scowled at it. That doesn't make any sense at all. He shouted as he handed Hinata the scroll. She took it and then read it again. Maybe it means it's where a bunch of other scrolls are. Maybe it's at the library, she suggested to the blonde who put his hand on his chin. Yeah, you could be right, he said as he started running towards the library. He looked behind him and saw Hinata running after him. Wait, couldn't we track the scroll? Naruto suddenly stopped in the middle of the training ground. What's wrong, Naruto? Hinata asked as she looked at her friend. I have an idea. He bit his thumb and started weaving hand seals. Once he was done, he slammed his hand on the ground and shouted, summoning jutsu, kitsune. Out of the plume of smoke came a small brown fox that had black tips on its ears. It was the size of a normal house cat and walked over to Naruto. Hey, Naru-chan, she said as she eyed the boy's face. Hey, Fima-chan, Naruto called to the fox who yipped in excitement. We need your help. What do you need help with? The fox asked as she looked between Naruto and Hinata. Is it possible that you can track the scent off of this scroll? He asked the fox who nodded its head. Hinata instantly knew what he was trying to do. Instead of going in blindly to a location that they had a hunch the scroll would be, they would use the fox to track the scent of the scroll and find it that way. Hinata looked at Naruto and smiled at him. Good idea, Naruto-kun. She complimented the boy who smiled back. Thanks, Hinata, he yelled as he held out the scroll for the fox to smell. I have a scent that leads this way, Fima said as she pointed in the direction towards the center of Konoha. Alright, let's go find that scroll, Naruto shouted as the trio ran towards the center of town. Fima led the trio all over Konoha, as they tried to find this scroll. She led them through the market, through the park, and even in and out of a few shops. They got strange looks from villagers and it seemed that some of the shinobi were laughing at them. After 3 hours, they finally came to a dead end in a back alley. I'm sorry Naru, but the trail ends here, Fima said as she lowered her head. It's okay Fima-chan, you tried your best, Hinata said to the fox as she petted her head. Yeah, you can go back home now, we'll figure something out, Naruto told the fox who yipped and left. Maybe it's not visible, Hinata said as she activated her Byakugan to try and find the scroll. I wish I could help, but I'm not supposed to use my eyes in public unless it's an emergency, Naruto said as he looked down. It's okay because I found something that might be helpful, Hinata said as she walked over to a brick that was misplaced on a wall. She then proceeds to pull it out, revealing a small scroll tucked away. Hinata, you found it, Naruto said as he hugged the girl who smiled back. He then grabbed the scroll and read its contents. Good job, now all you need to do is return to the place you started from. Don't forget to take this as proof. It looks like all we need to do now is go back home, Naruto explained to Hinata who nodded her head. The duo then proceeded to start their walk towards the Hyuga compound when Naruto felt something off. He grabbed Hinata's hand and lightly squeezed it. Naruto, what's wrong? She whispered to her friend. Someone is following us, he whispered back to her and she nodded her head. What should we do? She asked. She didn't want to start a fight in such a crowded area. Follow me. He then started walking towards an empty training ground. They both then walked out into the middle and stopped. You can come out now, we know you are there. Naruto shouted to seemingly no one. He looked around and felt a single chakra signature. Suddenly, a figure dressed in all black wearing a rabbit mask appeared in the field in front of Naruto and Hinata. Hand me the scroll or you die. The figure said as they released a bit of ki. Hinata whispered, Kai, which released her bow and quiver that had 25 arrows. She had a medium-sized wooden bow that had a slight indent in the center for her hand. Her quiver was strapped across her torso. She pulled out an arrow and readied to shoot it. Naruto stood in front of Hinata and moved his left foot behind him. He then lifted his arms up and narrowed his eyes. Who are you? Naruto asked as he looked around his surroundings to get a feel for the area. There were very few trees and was mostly a wide open field. He cursed silently but did wonder why the two voices in his head were quiet. Naru, this is a mission. We aren't gonna help you unless we think it's necessary. Akari said to the boy who nodded his head in understanding. If you will not hand over the scroll then you will be forced to. The figure then took off towards the duo. Naruto started sprinting towards the figure and threw a right punch to the figure's stomach. While Naruto was running, Hinata shot an arrow at the figure. The arrow was heading right towards Naruto, but at the last second Naruto felt the arrow coming due to his whiskers and moved his head. The figure, not expecting Naruto to suddenly move, had to dodge the arrow as well. They were able to dodge but were then hit in the knee by a kick from Naruto. Naruto then proceeded to land a punch in the right rib and then did a dropkick to get some distance. He then started going through hand seals. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Naruto launched several fireballs towards the figure who was able to dodge them all. When they landed they had to dodge an arrow from Hinata but were hit by a palm strike to the arm. What hit me? They thought to themselves as they turned around. They then saw that there was a clone of Hinata behind them. Shit. They thought as they tried to avoid both arrows and palm strikes from Hinata and her clone. Lightning style. Thunder rain. Naruto launched several lightning bolts at the attacker who was starting to get overwhelmed by the attack from the two children. They were able to dispel the clone of Hinata but were shot in the upper arm by an arrow. Seeing that her attacker was distracted, Hinata sprinted and got ready to do a palm strike when she felt the attacker grab her. The attacker looked at Naruto and held a kunai at Hinata's neck. Hand me the scroll or she dies. Naruto was freaking out. He didn't know what to do because all he had was one single shuriken and a kunai. He knew he couldn't throw it at the attacker because there was a chance that it could hit Hinata. What can I do? I wish there was a way I could get behind her. Wait, the fourth Hokage was able to teleport with a kunai that he threw. What if I threw the shuriken and substituted myself with it? That could work. Naruto grabbed the shuriken and threw it. He aimed for the attacker's head. When the attacker saw the shuriken heading for their head, they moved their head out of the way. Is that all you've got? They called out to Naruto but then they looked closer and saw that Naruto was gone. I think I'm done, but so are you. The attacker turned their head and saw that Naruto had a kunai pointed directly at the swell of their back. He substituted with the shuriken so that he could get behind me. The kunai would stable me in the spine and cripple me. Wow. They both did fantastic jobs. Good job guys. The attacker said as they let go of Hinata. Once Hinata was out of the figure's grasp, they lifted up the mask to reveal a smiling Hitomi. You both did a fantastic job and should be proud of what you both were able to accomplish. She smiled at the two children who looked at her with confusion written on their faces. So that was you? Naruto shouted, which made her giggle. Yes, it was me. If you're wondering how you didn't recognize my chakra, it because of a special seal a friend of mine made for me years ago. She explained, which made Naruto nod. I am sorry I shot you, Ka-chan, Hinata said as she lowered her head. Oh sweetie, it's okay. You didn't know it was me. You did a fantastic job. Hitomi sweetly praised Hinata and kissed her on the forehead. How about we all go home and get some dinner? I heard there might be ramen there. She smiled as she watched Naruto's eyes widen with stars in them. The trio walked over to the Hyuga compound and got ready for dinner, which was ramen, and for dessert cinnamon buns. Once dinner was over, Naruto and Hinata both sat down and meditated so that they could dispel their clones. After the clones were all dispelled, Naruto felt Kakashi and Yugao's chakra enter his range and smiled. "Hey, Nei-chan," Naruto shouted as he ran up to Yugao, who giggled and hugged her brother tightly. "Hi Naru, how was training?" she asked the blonde, who smiled back at her. "Naruto is doing very well and his teamwork with Hinata is spectacular," Hitomi replied to the blonde as she walked up to the Anbu agent. "That's wonderful." She let go of Naruto and the three of them walked over to Kakashi, who also hugged Naruto. Yugao turned to look at Hitomi and smiled fondly. "Do you think they will be ready for the test in a few weeks?" she quietly asked the mother, who smirked. "They'll be fine," Hitomi said as she took one last glance at the smiling blonde ball of sunshine that was talking to Kakashi. "They'll do just fine." It was a hot summer day in Konoha, and while Sarutobi would love to be out in the sun enjoying retirement, he was stuck in yet another council meeting. He looked around the large oak room and sighed to himself. There were 4 main governing bodies in Konoha. There was the Hokage, who was the leader of the village. They were in charge of all military and domestic affairs. They were the fire daimyo's representative in the hidden village. Usually, Hokage had absolute power, but in the time since the Third Ninja War, Sarutobi delegated some of the more monotonous tasks of a cage to the civilian council. Then there were the village elders, who were the advisors to the Hokage. They were meant to be the people who helped the Hokage with decisions that affected village people, included Danzo, Homura, and Kaharu. There usually were only 2 village elders, but Danzo was able to worm his way onto it due to being the civilian council representative. The third part included the clan heads. There were the 3 founding clans, which were the Senju, Uzumaki, and Uchiha. These clans have the first 3 seats in the council chambers. Then there were the Sarutobi, Hyuga, Nara, Inuzuka, Aburame, Yamanaka, and Akamichi clans, who were the next seats after the Uchiha. These were the main clans of Konoha, which were in charge of shinobi affairs since they provided the most amount of the shinobi forces of the village. Finally, there was the civilian side of the council. This governing body was created by Hashirama, disbanded by Tobirama, and brought back by Sarutobi during the Third War. They actually held no influence or power but were included in meetings due to the good grace of Sarutobi. Minato had tried to get rid of them but was dissuaded by the third Hokage, who thought that they were a good addition to the council. Today though, Sarutobi found himself stuck in a meeting which was called by the civilians to discuss the sighting of Hinata Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki. While they had been seen together 5 days ago, Danzo thought that it was a good idea to tell specific council members that morning. This is why there is now a council meeting happening. You can't let that demoniciate with someone of her stature, Hokage-sama. One of the council members cried. 1. Yes, I agree with Hiruzen. You don't know if it is going to taint the good nature of the Hyuga clan, Homura spoke in a calm voice. Enough. I have already said that I will not speak on the matter of Naruto any longer. Sarutobi cried as he lit his pipe. And why is that? Because you have grown soft in your old age? Danzo asked as he inwardly smirked. He had spies watching the Jinchuriki's every move when they could get to him, so he knew that Naruto and Hinata were in contact with each other a lot. No, it's because it is a clan issue, and last time I checked, Hiashi doesn't disapprove of Hinata being with Naruto. The aged leader responded as he looked at the Hyuga clan head, who nodded his head. Oh, then why would he be staying at the compound so often? Danzo raised his eyebrow in an innocent manner which made Hiruzen narrow his eyes. That is because we agreed with his guardians that he would be staying with my clan whenever they were to be away, Hiashi said to the old man, who narrowed his eyes. What Hiashi said wasn't a full lie, but he didn't want to let the information slip that Naruto was at the compound 3 times a week. Wait, guardians? A black-haired lady said with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, we didn't see any papers pertaining to it having a guardian. Another member said. Well, He has two loving guardians who are very happy with the idea of living with Naruto, Sarutobi replied with a smirk. Who are the boy's guardians, Hokage-sama? The Nara clan head asked. Kakashi Hatake and Yugao Azuki. Shikaku's eyes immediately narrowed at the old man, which made him flinch slightly. When did this happen? The lazy man asked as he was now at full attention. A little over 7 months ago, Sarutobi said to the man who nodded his head. Sarutobi knew that Shikaku would be mad at the fact that he didn't tell him that Naruto had been adopted. It would have been logical to inform us of these things, Hokage-sama. Shibuya added in. His face was as emotionless as possible, but if you were to listen closer, you could hear a slight buzzing sound coming from the inside of his coat. I'm sorry I didn't say anything to the council, but the circumstances of his adoption were an S-rank secret. Hiruzen explained to the council, which made them all narrow their eyes at him. Oh, then why did it happen? Fugaku asked without looking up from the papers in front of him. He had noticed that Makoto was spending more and more amounts of time outside of the district and had a feeling it was due to Naruto. Why would you like to know? I didn't think the mighty Uchiha clan would care about one single orphan. Hiyashi asked, which made the Uchiha clan head narrow his eyes. Of course I would like to know about the most dangerous person in the village. How did Hiyashi even get to know? Fugaku retorted, which made the man internally smirk. Because he was privy to the information, Sarutobi interjected as he watched the two men eye each other. It's always the Hyugas, is it not? Fugaku asked the Sandame who eyed him. They are always the ones that need the pity and the help. I didn't think your clan was so weak that you needed to take care of a Jinchuriki in order to look strong. Then again, what parent relies on a child to save their own daughter? The entire room dropped several degrees after Fugaku's statement. Tusmi, Shibi, Inochi, and Choza looked at the man with raised eyes. Hokage-sama, what is the fool with pink eye talking about now? Sume asked the old man, who frowned and shook his head. Yes, what is he talking about? Inochi raised his eyebrow and he looked at the Uchiha head. Oh, you didn't hear. Naruto was the one who stopped the Cloud Nin that captured the Hyuga heiress. Fugaku smugly stated, which made all the members of the Shinobi Council's eyes widen. We don't care, so we are going to leave, the head of the civilian council said as he rose from his seat. After a few minutes, everyone who wasn't a member of the Shinobi Council or was an elder had left the room. Well, Fugaku, it seems that you've been snooping around again, Hayashi said in a low tone, which made the man smirk at him. Yeah, and what are you going to do about it? You don't have your blonde protector here to stop me, do you? Fugaku asked, which made Hiyashi clench his fists in anger. Ah, what's wrong? Did I strike a nerve? It would be best if you didn't talk about the Yondaime like that, Fugaku-san. Shibi defended his friend in an even tone. Yeah, we all know that you wouldn't be saying that if he and Kushina were here. In fact, if you did say it, they both would have beaten you black and blue. Sume smirked, which made Fugaku narrow his eyes. That foreign redheaded bitch couldn't even touch me. It's no wonder she died that night. It didn't take long for the room to become saturated with levels of ki. Sume was ready to rip the Uchiha's head off while Choza had his fists ready to pound him. You would beat her? Shikaku asked with a raised eyebrow. I guess the rumors were true about what you do in your private time. This made Fugaku's eyes turn into the Sharingan and he glared at the Nara clan head. What I do with my bitch is my own business, Nara, he stated with an icy edge to his voice. Maybe she would actually like you if you didn't hit her all the time, but who knows? The Nara lazily commented as he waved the man off. If only Minato was here, he would have beaten the shit out of you if he heard you call Makoto that, Inochi said, which made everyone nod in agreement. I didn't think you were that weak, Inochi. Why don't you come over here and do it yourself, or do you need your boyfriends to do it for you? Fugaku shot back, which made Shikaku and Choza glare at him. You know, it's actually a shame he died. I would have just loved to see the look on his face when my kids whipped the floor with whatever that whore would have popped out. Are you saying that the offspring of the greatest Hokage ever to live and the daughter of a legendary Sannin who is also the granddaughter of the first Hokage would not be great? Choza asked the man. Please, he was a weakling who got lucky and she was the daughter of a drunk, Fugake said, which made the already heavy amount of ki in the room nearly double. It would be best for you to watch what you say about my successor and my student Uchiha-san, Sarutobi angrily interjected. Well, then why aren't they here, Sarutobi? They were weak and they died because of it. That useless hag couldn't even produce one good child. It died during childbirth. It's a shame though, I would have loved to see my child pummel it into the ground. Everyone glared at Fugaku except for Hiashi since he knew that Naruto was leagues better than Sasuke and was on the level of Itachi. He also knew that Hinata was better than Sasuke as well. In fact, my child Itachi got promoted at the Chunin exams back in March and is one of the youngest to get promoted since the war. It seems that bitch has one use in this world and it's making babies. Fugaku smugly stated, which made Sum growl at him. Hey-ho, maybe you should try to treat your wife with a little more respect than an incubator for whatever your shriveled up fires out. She yelled, which made the man glare at her. Aw, looks like someone's a little cranky. Maybe you should have your husband take your spot on this council. Oh, wait, he can't since he's sleeping in a wooden box 6 feet underground. Fugaku shouted at the woman who leapt up from her seat and was about to attack. Silence. Suddenly the entire room went silent and everyone saw the might of the third Hokage, who was fed up with how the meeting was going. He knew that all of the clan heads grew up with each other. He also knew that everyone hated Fugaku and Danzo, but that didn't mean that his time would be wasted by petty arguing. You will be barred from entering this chamber if you cannot act like clan heads and not like petty children. I will not tolerate fighting in this chamber. Do I make myself clear? He yelled at the clan heads, who all nodded their heads. Good. Now before I leave, we have to discuss the Chunin who we will be sending to Kurigakure. How many teams are we sending? Shikaku asked the leader, who passed out papers to the group. We will be sending 4 teams of 3 and 1 team of 2, Hiruzen said after he took a drag of his pipe. A team of 2. They must be very powerful, Choza pointed out. Yes, they are strong. So strong that I have them favored to win the entire tournament. I just need to pick out a sensei for them, Sarutobi rubbed his chin in deep thought. I can provide them a sensei, Danzo pointed out as he made his presence known. Everyone turned towards the man who made his presence known and narrowed their eyes at him. Danzo merely smirked at them all and passed them a paper with a photo of a man with brown hair and brown eyes. Meet Eiji Kano, Jonin of Konoha. Danzo said, which made Fugaku smirk. Both had a feeling about who was going to be on this team and wanted to get any information they could. While Saruboy looked cool as could be, on the inside he was fuming. He knew that if he declined, then it would look suspicious, so he had to accept. Damn Danzo. Always messing things up. I will line them with him, but they will be training with their respective teachers until they are ready to leave for Kiri, Sarutobi said to his rival, who nodded his head. That is reasonable, Danzo agreed, but was inwardly fuming that he couldn't get intel. Alright, well, it seems that this meeting is over. I would like to see Hiashi, Shikaku, and Shibi in my office after this, he said as he got up from the table and left the meeting hall. Saruboy walked into his office and saw that Kakashi, Yugao, Makoto, and Hitomi were all in there waiting for him. When Kakashi and Yugao saw the Hokage, they immediately bowed, which made the man chuckle. At ease, he said with a wave of his hand. What took you so long? Makoto asked the group as they walked in and sealed the office. We had some issues in the council meeting today, Hiashi said as he walked over to kiss his wife on the lips. If you count the entire shinobi council arguing with each other like children, you all should be ashamed of yourselves for the way that you acted today. Saruboy yelled, which made everyone drop their heads in shame. It was the most embarrassing meeting I've been a part of, Shibi said as he broke the silence. Yes, Fugaku needed to keep his mouth shut. Makoto, I'm sorry about the things he said to you and about you. I'm just sorry and I wish I could do more to help you. This whole situation is just such a drag, Shikaku said as he bowed to Makoto, who smiled kindly at the man. It's okay, Shikaku-kun. He's just a nond. Hopefully, things will change, but for the time being, I will be strong for my kids, she said with a kind smile on her face. Through this meeting is pleasant, why are we here, Hokage-sama? Shibi asked the man who sighed and sat behind his desk. Shibi, Shikaku, and Hiyashi, you were on Genin team number 3, is that correct? Sarutobi asked the men, who all nodded their heads. Who was the person who befriended you three at the academy? Minato Namikaze. Why do you ask, Hokage-sama? Shikaku asked as he eyed the man in front of him. What I'm about to share with you is labeled as an SS rank secret and must be kept at all costs, is that clear? Sarutobi asked, which made the three men stand straighter. Hi. All three saluted to the leader, who smirked. Good. Now in that council meeting I mentioned 2 genin that will be taking the Chunin exams. Those kids are none other than Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga, Sarutobi said, which made Shikaku look at the man with a raised eyebrow. Uzumaki. As is Kushina Uzumaki? He asked the Hokage, who nodded his head in sadness. This is such a drag. Is there a reason why you kept the son of my best friend a secret? I had a feeling it was him when you brought him on that night. I'm glad that Kakashi and Yugao were able to adopt him though. Not without jumping through hoops and hurdles, Yugao mumbled but was silenced by an elbow to the rib from Kakashi. Yes, Hokage-sama, I too would like to know why he was kept hidden. Shibi reposed as he sat in one of the chairs that were in the office. I thought that it was a good idea to say that he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, but Minato actually wrote for me not to do that. Too bad I read his letter too late. It also was revealed that Naruto has the Sharingan. How is that? Minato covered his eyes with a Genjutsu, didn't he? Shikaku asked, which made both Makoto and Hiruzen nod their heads. Minato-kun used a seal on the nape of his neck. He made it after the Chunin exams when he had to fight Fugaku without it. Makoto explained to the people present, who nodded their heads. My only question is, who are Minato's parents? There aren't that many people with blonde hair like that here in the village. Along with having the Sharingan, they must have been outside of the village during the start of the Second Great War. Maybe they were a wandering Uchiha who met Jasmine Namikaze. Hiyashi asked the man in front of him, who pushed a piece of paper onto the desk. Everyone saw the paper and crowded around to read it. Birth certificate for one. Minato Namikaze Uchiha. Mother. Jasmine Namikaze. Age. 47 years. Father. Madara Uchiha. Age. 54 years. Weight at birth. 8.3 pounds. Length at birth. 21 inches. Holy shit, he was Madara's son. Makoto yelled, which made everyone sweat drop. I can see why you hid this, Shikaku said to the old man, who nodded his head. Yes, not only would it throw the entire village for a loop, but would also have painted a target on Minato's back when he was younger. So now, on top of his parents' legacies, Naruto is the grandson of Dan Uzumaki, who was the heir of Whirlpool, and the entire Uzumaki clan fortune. He is the grandson of Tsunade Senju, who is a legendary Sannin. He is also the grandson of Madara Uchiha, who was one of the strongest shinobi to ever live, but he is also the heir to the entire Namikaze fortune. Sarutobi explained, which made the eyes of everyone present goes wide. Even Shibi's eyes were slightly visible from the tops of his glasses. Hokage-sama, how rich is Naruto? Hitomi asked the man, who chuckled. That I actually don't know. He is the heir of a country and 2 clans. Since Tsunade is still alive, she has access to the Senju accounts but not the Uzumaki accounts. Right before Kushina and Minato died, they calculated that the Uzumaki account had around 7.89 trillion ryu in it. That was what was in the vault that they had access to. Kushina suspected that there was a vault in Uzu that had a lot more in it. So really, who knows? Add that onto the Namikaze accounts, which Minato found when he went back to his family home in his first year of office. He found that they were worth about 800 billion ryu. This is not including the investments, loans, and companies that have namikaze funding in them. Then you are looking at trillions of ryu. If Naruto were to ever decide to want interest for the loans that this village owes, it would definitely cripple the economy of this village, but the land of fire in general. 2. Shikaku and Hiashi looked at each other and then back at the Hokage, who was smiling. Both men expected Naruto to be loaded because of his parents. But to think that he could basically buy the entire village and possibly the entire land of fire was insane. Has Naruto been made aware of these things? Hayashi asked as he tried to think of ways that he could keep Naruto's influence in his family. No, he has not, but in Minato's will, he states that he wants him to be made aware of it by the time he makes Chunin. He explicitly said regardless of age. And Hiashi, if you are thinking about ways to get that money, you won't be getting it without Naruto's consent. That money is his and his alone. Sarutobi said, which made the Hyuga clan head frown. And don't even think about any political marriages either, Hitomi said, which shocked the entire room. I want my child to fall in love with him naturally. Yeah, because Kami knows they're destined for each other, Makoto said with a warm smile on her face. Speaking of Naruto and Hinata, shouldn't you be with them? Hiashi asked, which made the two women and elderly man smirk. Are you ready to watch their genin test? Sarutobi asked as he brought out his crystal ball. He placed the ball and gestured for everyone to pull up a chair. Now then, let the test begin. Nato and Hinata were enjoying a break from their heavy and demanding training. They had gotten very far in the last few months and were excited to see what they were going to do next. Naruto was slowly increasing his speed and physical strength, while Hinata was learning more and more about the human body and the mind. She was also getting better at using a bow. Naruto-kun, she said as she rested on her back. Yeah, what's up? He asked as he gazed up at the clouds. What's next? Naruto sat up and looked at his friend with a raised eyebrow. They knew that they were training for the Chunin exams that were happening in a few weeks, but after that, they didn't know. All they knew was that something was going to happen. He had looked on the old man's desk and saw that there were several job openings for the people who did well in the exams. There were even a few Anbu positions that were applying for requests. Although if it were up to Naruto, he would want to continue studying seals. He had just figures out the 4 trigram sealing formula and was having lots of fun applying it to different things. Well, I guess we would get jobs. He shrugged his shoulders while glancing at Hinata, who frowned. What about the academy? She asked as she looked at her friend, who smiled at her. I'm sure we can think of something when the time comes. We still have 2 months till we have to even begin thinking about our next steps. Naruto reassured the girl, who weakly smiled at him back. But I did have an idea. What is it? She asked as he turned to gaze back up at the clouds. What if we made a store? Hinata was caught off guard by this. She didn't think of Naruto to be the one who came up with the idea for making a corporation or company. What would we sell? Anything. We could make a store that sold literally anything and everything. I was reading about it and asked Gigi about it, and he said that I could do it. We could make a corporation. He shouted excitedly as he got up and looked at a wide-eyed Hinata. Maybe we should wait till we are older. We are only 4 years old, Naruto-kun. She suggested as she smiled at the boy. Yeah, I guess you're right, Hinata-chan. Man, you're always right. Plus, what would you even name it? She asked as she looked over at her friend. Well, your last name is Hyuga and mine is Uzumaki, so it could be Hughes Kermp. He shouted with a wide smile on his masked face. I'll like it, she said with a smile on her face. Yeah, I'm GLA. Naruto stopped talking and immediately went on alert. He felt a disturbance in the chakra around him and didn't like it at all. He glanced over at Hinata and gave her a small nod. She immediately went on guard and both started looking around. Ka-chan, Ba-chan, did you feel that? Naruto asked his internal parental figures, who both nodded their heads. Yes, Naru-chan. We felt too. Mito responded as she tried to extend her senses to see what was going on. Maybe you should be ready for anything because I don't know what's going on. Naruto nodded his head and pulled out a kuni. He looked at Hinata, who already had her bow in her hand. Suddenly, there was a puff of smoke and a figure appeared. He was around 5 feet 11 and had on a tiger mask. Anbu. Naruto immediately thought as he took in the Anbu's appearance and overall stature. So this must have been the disturbance I felt. Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga, you have a mission. It is disclosed in this scroll, he said before he vanished in a plume of smoke. Naruto looked at Hinata, who was amazed at the justice that was used. Naruto then proceeded to open the scroll and read its contents aloud. Mission brief. 1. Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga are to report to Konoha's East Gate. They are then to go 23 miles away from Konoha and exterminate a bandit camp. There are between 15 and 25 bandits. Upon completion, report to the Hokage for mission debrief. Hiruzen Sarutobi, 3rd Hokage of Konoha. Well, this will be interesting, Naruto said as he rolled up the scroll. We need to kill, Hinata whispered while holding her bow in her hand. She knew that she would have to eventually kill someone, but she didn't think that it would be so early. She thought that all life was precious, so she wanted to heal and help people. Yes, Hinata-chan, it looks like we will have to kill these people, Naruto stated as he held out his hand to take Hinata's. I know that it sounds really bad, and it is. But like Tobirama-sama once said, one must always remember that if one performs service for one's village, that village will return that service tenfold. We got this, and we can get cinnamon buns after, Naruto said with a wide smile on his face. Hinata looked at him and thought about his words for a few minutes. After thinking about it, she realized that this was something that she was going to have to do in her life. I'll have to do this if I want to stay by Naruto-kun's side. I'll do anything and everything to be by his side. I'll do it, she thought to herself. Okay, Naruto-kun, let's do this. She looked at his eyes and they looked like they had a certain fire behind them. Both children had the flames of determination in them and weren't going to give up on anything that was thrown in their way. Both children went to Naruto's apartment and went to gear up for their mission. When they were finished, they made their way to the East Gate where they would depart. Hokage's office. Why is he quoting Tobirama-sama? Shikaku asked the group, who shrugged their shoulders. I honestly thought he would become obsessed with the Yandamai, but I guess Tobirama-sama works as well, Tsuruboy said as he lit his pipe to take a drag of it. Wait, has this always been a thing? Makoto asked as she looked at the small pile of books that were in one of the corners of the office. Well, he found him on his first day here and I've been slowly supplying him with information about him ever since. I don't see the harm in him learning about Tobirama-sama, Hiruzen said as he watched the duo race through the trees at top speeds to get to the bandit camp. So wait, what do you have planned for these two, Hokage-sama? Hisashi asked while leaning back into his chair. Well, I plan to have them 10 miles away from camp. Naruto and Hinata had been sprinting for the past 45 minutes. They were able to pump a large amount of chakra through their legs so that they would be able to reach their destination in a semi-timely manner. Naruto-kun, what's the plan for these bandits that we now have to kill? She whispered into his ear as they landed on a branch. Well, I can sense in a 15 radius and I just started sensing them, so we are getting closer. It looks like there are around 23 bandits in the camp right now. Hopefully we should be able to take care of them easily, he explained as he started double-checking their supplies. Hinata nodded her head and sighed to herself. She had been in these situations with Naruto before, but this felt different for some reason. She felt like he was in business mode, and wouldn't be cracking jokes like he normally would. He even felt a little different as well, but that didn't change the fact that he was still Naruto. The duo slowly eased their pace as they made it closer and closer to the camp. Naruto had sent out around 4 different clones which were hanged into different animals and bugs so that he could get a better sense of the area. Once they were right on top of the camp, they stopped and looked at each other. I can take the ones that are on the right side of the camp and you can take the ones on the left side and Naruto-kun, Hinata suggested to her blonde teammate who nodded his head. We'll meet back here once we are finished. Be safe Hinata-chan, he whispered to the girl who nodded her head, though if he were to look closely, he would have been able to see a slight blush on her cheek. Hokage's office. You've lost it, old man. If one were to look at the current state of the Hokage's office, they would see one Kakashi Hatake restraining his current life partner, Yugao Azuki. They would also see Hiyashi Hyuga calming down his now fuming wife. I have a very good explanation for why I did what I did, he said quickly as he surveyed the room. Oh really? Shikaku asked as he looked from the crystal ball to the leader's face. Well, now would be a really good time to say it. I wanted to test them. If I just gave them the normal Genin test, it wouldn't have shown anything. I needed to see what they could actually do in a combat situation. Don't worry, it's just a simple C-rank mission. He explained to the group, who all relented and calmed down enough to continue watching the test take place. You just want to see them go 100% all out, don't you? Makoto said to the Hokage, who nodded his head. Well, let me tell you, there's some stuff that we don't even know. Excuse me? He asked with wide eyes. Yup. Sometimes Naruto or Hinata would come up with situations or plans when we aren't around. I only know it's happened because I find them asleep on the training field sometimes. Hitomi explained to the group, who all looked quite shocked. Bet that as it may, Shibi said while looking at the old man with a level-headed stare. They will be killing as 4-year-olds. Kakashi-san, you didn't make your first kill until you were something like 6 or 7. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct, and that brings up another good point. These are still children we are talking about. I would feel better if we had them talk to Inochi or his wife as a way to make sure that they come out of this sane in the end. Kakashi suggested, which made the others nod their heads in agreement. I had planned for that to happen in the following days depending on the success of this mission, Kakashi-kun. Hiruzen said with a smile on his face. He would have hated to damage not only his new apprentice, but also the son of his successor more than he already had. Alright, Yugao said as she tried to get everyone's attention back on the crystal ball that was in front of them. It looks like the main event is just about to start. 50 meters from camp, Naruto and Hinata had just split up and went to their respective sides of the camp. He slowly made his way, walking on the ground and hiding in the shadows so that he was undetectable and unnoticed. He looked up and saw that he was about to enter the camp, so he jumped up and landed on a tree branch. Any suggestions on how I should do this? He mentally asked the residents of his head. Well, you need to kill them without letting them know you are here. Akari bluntly said as she summed up the situation. You will probably need to kill them silently with a kunai. Hinata has her bow, so she has range to her advantage. You'll need to get up close and personal. I agree with your mother, Guppy. You'll also need to make sure that none of them escape, so I suggest setting up a barrier around the camp so that no one gets in or out. Mito suggested to her grandson, who nodded his head in agreement. Wait, I thought that you guys weren't going to help me on missions. He emptily shouted at the two beings who gained tick marks over their eyebrows. We decided that we would give you advice only if you asked or if we thought the situation needed it, Akari explained to the boy who nodded his head. Okay, that works for me, he thought as he jumped outside of a yellow tent. He slowly approached the tent flaps and made his way inside. He looked around and found one of the bandits was facing away from him. Naruto looked up and frowned. He was too short to go for a strike to the neck, so he had to improvise. He snuck up behind the man and launched a strike directly at his heart. Naruto, who after countless hours of studying and reading, now had all the locations of the body ingrained into his head. The bandit didn't even scream as he fell into the grips of death. Naruto jumped out of the way and tried to make the man's descent silent, but ultimately failed when the man landed with a soft thud on the ground. At the same time, Hinata had just taken out 2 people from a tree. She used her Byakugan and her bow to shoot them in the head from afar. That way she was still getting the job done, but wasn't getting up close and personal. Though that wasn't to say that it didn't have the same effect. Killing was still killing, even if it was from afar. Back with Naruto, he looked around and exited the tent only to come face to face with another bandit. Hey, what are you? We have intruders in the camp. Naruto immediately launched a kunai at the man's throat, which permanently silenced the man. He then kicked him in the knees and stabbed him in the eyes, but it was too late. Suddenly, an alarm went off which signaled to all that someone had in fact heard what the man said. This also caused both Naruto and Hinata to go on high alert, as now everyone in the camp would know that they were there. Well, poop, Naruto stated quietly as he sprinted through the camp. He immediately turned on his eyes, and started to dodge strikes from swords and clubs. He jumped up into the air and started throwing shuriken at the bandits. Well, boys, looks like we have a little boy that we get to torture. One of the bandits shouted as he and a few others started sprinting towards Naruto. The boy then immediately started going through hand seals and landed on the ram seal. Lightning style. Lightning rain. Suddenly, bolts of lightning started raining down from above all of the bandits' heads. The Judas caused the ground to be littered with holes and scolding corpses. Naruto looked around and felt the chakra signatures of 7 other men. He then started going through more hand seals and launched a gale of wind towards them. Wind style. Wind launcher. The 7 men that were coming towards the blonde child were ideally thrown back into trees or rocks where their backs were crushed. Naruto then immediately ran over and started throwing kunai and shuriken at the bodies to make sure that they were dead. He then immediately looked up and saw that 4 more bandits were about to throw rocks at him. He sprinted and started to dodge the income boulders and went through more seals. Fire style. Giant fireball. The medium-sized fireballs launched out of Naruto's mouth were launched directly at the bandits who tried to dodge them. 2 of the bandits were able to dodge them only to be hit in the head by shuriken which Naruto had thrown at the bandits. The other didn't even need the shuriken since he's already dead. Naruto then looked around to try and find Hinata, but sensed that something was coming towards him. He then dropped to the floor as a large chain was launched towards him. It would seem like I have some pests that I need to exterminate. Naruto jumped to his feet and turned around to see a 6-foot-tall man with a large scar covering his entire face. He wore a green and black overcoat with a slashed Konoha headband brandished on his left bicep. He wore bulk Anbu-style pants and brown combat boots. Naruto didn't have to look because he felt the presence of Hinata drop down next to him. He also didn't have to look to tell that she was very much shaken with the amount of dead bodies she was around right now. You're Ramin Jijiro, B rank Kana Nuke Nin. What are you doing here? Naruto shouted at the man who smirked at the 2 children standing in front of him. Naruto immediately started going through sign language next to him so that Hinata could see it. Battle format. 5 inches. She immediately went behind Naruto and started drawing back her bow. She knew exactly what he wanted to do and she knew exactly what she needed to do in order to get the desired result. Naruto then started crouching low to the ground and grabbed numerous shuriken. Jijiro, you are a nuke nin of Konoha, meaning that you abandoned the village. Since your bingo book entry states that you are to be reinsured dead or alive, we will not hesitate to kill you. Naruto stated in the most serious voice he could muster. He was actually quite surprised that he didn't stutter due to how terrified he was. He knew that while it was a long shot, both he and Hinata had the smallest chance against the large man. Naruto knew that Jijiro was a man who relied on earth chakra a lot. In fact, that's all the man knew besides the 3 basic techniques. Naruto also knew that both he and Hinata had pretty much all 5 elements covered. Since he knew justice for all the elements, and was strong in lightning release, water release, and wind release. Naruto also knew that Hinata was there who had an even higher water affinity than he did. She was also quite good at lightning release and some earth release techniques. The only problem that Naruto figured they would have was their lack of experience. Please, What could a bunch of children do to me? He arrogantly asked as he got into a stance for taijutsu. Alright, Naruto said as he drew out a shuriken in his hands. You asked for it. With those words said, Naruto took off towards Jijiro, who had an ever-present smirk on his face the entire time. Hokage's office. Shit. Everyone looked at the old man with great amounts of worry. Both Kakashi and Yugao knew who the man Naruto and Hinata were facing up against, but the others didn't. If I may ask, Hokage-sama, Shibi asked as he looked at the crystal ball with confusion. Who is that man they are fighting against and why are you so worried? That is Ramin Jijiro. He is a B-rank criminal like Naruto said and is in the bingo book. Sarutobi said, which made everyone's eyes widen. Wait, so he was right. Makoto shouted as he looked at the old man who nodded his head. Makoto-chan, what are you talking about? Shikaku asked as he looked at the woman with a raised eyebrow. A couple of months ago, Naruto came running to me asking for me to sign his copy of the bingo book. I was confused because I had been retired for 5 years and the updated copy wouldn't have me in it. So I asked him about it and he said that the Hokage gave him the legacy bingo book which every ninja ever put into the bingo book ever. I didn't believe him, so I went to the Hokage and he said that he didn't know anything about it. She explained to everyone who nodded their heads. I'm not too worried about them.